It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join News Director Paul David as he talks with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it is great to have you in studio today. We're sitting down with Morgan Scott, Cottonwood Management Analyst, their website, cottonwoodaz.gov. We're here to talk about airport noise and the airport in general. Hello, Morgan.
Thanks, Paul.
Welcome to studio. You gave a presentation of the draft plan for the airport, and so we're here to kind of run through it today and talk about it some more, and then I'll drum up some questions as you're talking. So why don't we get some background first? Airport noise. The airport's been there for a long time, since I was a kid living here, since you were a kid living here. The airport's been out there, but it's, I guess, gotten a little bit busier and a little bit noisier, and there's a lot more people that live out there too now. So what's the background on this?
So first of all, if you don't mind, if you talk about a little bit of background, I get a little excited. I apologize, I'm a little bit of a history nut. So the airport's actually started in the late 20s, really developed in the early 40s.
Really? Okay. Yeah. All right.
In fact, if you're ever by my office, Paul, I'll show you a 1942 aerial photo of Cottonwood, and there's 3 runways at that time.
Oh, really?
Today we only have 1.
Okay.
But there was 3 at that time. And the airport beacon is one of the oldest structures in Cottonwood. It's stamped Carnegie steel, which went out of business in 1903.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's a lot of history
That's
at that
back
airport.
in time. Yeah, that takes you back in time, doesn't it? Okay. All right.
So you're right. Airport's been here a while. But starting in March of 2018, the city began receiving a lot of complaints about airport noise, at least a lot more than normal. And something that was different than what was the traditional airport noise complaints is traditionally most noise complaints came from south of the airport, near the Verde Village Unit 8 area.
Okay.
And that area is about 1,400 feet south of the runway. So you can imagine there's a lot of people impacted by aircraft noise.
Sure.
What happened in March 2018, though, is it started spreading out throughout the whole city. In fact, almost a quarter of the complaints came from north of the airport, and the nearest residence is 6,600 feet from the end of the over a mile from the end of the runway.
Okay.
And a lot of people ask, what changed? Why are we getting more complaints now from different areas? And I think part of it's growth. We've had a lot of people move in and
Sure.
move in and around the airport. But 3 other things changed. One, just a better economy. I think in a better economy, we all take place in more leisurely activities. One of those is probably flying and or learning to fly. So I think we probably do have more activity than maybe we had during the Great Recession.
Okay.
So that's maybe one contributing factor. Another contributing factor is in August of 2018, the city of Prescott closed one of their 3 runways for reconstruction. So it was a 30-day period where one of their runways was closed. During that 30-day period, we had a lot more activity in Cottonwood than normal because obviously they displaced a lot of traffic.
What kind of traffic do we have when they do something like that? Let's talk about that. What kind of traffic are we talking about?
That's mostly training activities.
Okay.
So there's 4 large flight schools in Prescott. There's actually more than 4, but there's 4 large flight schools in Prescott, Embry-Riddle being the largest. A lot of people say, oh, there's Embry-Riddle traffic here today. It's actually not always Embry-Riddle traffic, but Embry-Riddle is the largest flight school. So by the way, Prescott's the 35th busiest airport in the country. They have,
wow. Okay.
They have over 270,000 flight operations a year compared to Cottonwood's 19,000.
Okay.
So Prescott is a very busy airport. So when they closed down one of their runways, that pushed quite a bit of training activity over here.
I can imagine.
Yep.
Okay.
And you can imagine why it's good to train here. They like it the same reason the rest of us like it. It's
Yeah.
beautiful weather.
Right.
You know,
Clear
vast majority of
skies,
days of the year.
beautiful weather, not always windy, but, you know, and then the airport's it was in a kind of a wide open space.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So when they closed that runway, I think that increased awareness. It made people more aware of the aircraft in the area. So that probably raised awareness quite a bit.
Put it on the map a little bit more.
It did.
Okay, that's understandable.
Yep. A third thing that happened in the summer of 2018 is an additional flight school moved to the Prescott area. They expanded out of Oregon, actually, and they specialize in what's called bush aircraft. They specialize literally in flying in dirt and grass runways, and these are very powerful, loud aircraft, mostly Piper Cubs, which are a beautiful historic aircraft if you ever study the history of the Piper.
Okay.
But they're very loud. In fact,
Powerful? Very powerful.
Yeah.
They have to be.
Yes, because they're made to take off in short distances, short
Sure.
little runways, because they literally land in
rough
pastures.
terrain.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense.
They'll land in a meadow in Alaska or something.
Wow. Okay.
And they're that's who they're training.
Okay.
So a lot of people refer to it as that loud yellow aircraft. It's actually about 3 aircraft. They're all are yellow. They look the same. Most most citizens wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the three, but most people refer to the yellow aircraft, and it's actually three, and they all belong to a flight school out of Prescott that expanded here, and they had the right to expand here per FAA guidelines that we'll talk about here in a minute.
Okay.
But I think that also added to a lot of people's awareness of these very loud Bush aircraft that came here.
Okay.
Interesting enough, they prefer to land and train on dirt and grass strips. In fact, when they first started flying over here, they said, "Can we land on the grass strip between the taxiway and the runway?" And we said, no, that's from a liability and safety point of view, absolutely you can't do that. But they would prefer to go land on grass and dirt strips somewhere. The problem is all the grass and dirt strips throughout Yavapai County and most of northern Arizona are private.
Oh.
So unlike a public airport where we have to allow all activity, all aviation activity, a private field, if it was on your property, you have the right to say yes or no.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
So they have been actively seeking out ranchers and other people to use their private dirt airstrips, and they found a few that say, for a couple days or here and there, but none of them have said yeah.
Nothing consistent and long term.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I can see why that's a problem then.
Yep.
All right.
So we'll talk about this here in a minute, but one of the long-term solutions, and I say long-term, is maybe looking for an auxiliary training field somewhere in northern Arizona that schools like that can go to.
Okay.
But that school coming over with, and again, they're a great school. They're above and beyond from a safety perspective. We're not worried about that, but they do tend to be louder aircraft.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Well, you had to look at all of it, right? Because
Yes.
that was your job. The city had taxed you with figure out what we're going to do about this. And here's Morgan. The bill.
Figure it out.
Trying to figure it out. So you've been doing a lot of research, and obviously on this one for sure. Okay, so we had a plan. We've got a draft plan. Are we ready to jump into the draft plan?
If you don't mind, if I'll talk a little bit more
Yeah,
about
sure.
what can we do? Because a lot of people say, well, why don't you just not allow training activity? Well, we looked at that. That was one of the first things that we looked at. And I really want to thank local pilot Doug Palmquist, because Doug went above and beyond digging up FAA documents. And he found one for us where it specifically says a public airport receiving federal funds shall not restrict touch and go training activity. So a lot of the citizens refer to the circling. That circling is a training activity known as a touch and go, where they come in, they literally touch down and take off. Well, you can imagine one of the most stressful parts of flight is the landing and the takeoff. Because a lot of people ask, why don't they just fly out in the middle of nowhere somewhere? Well, obviously they need a runway to practice taking off and landing, and most towns have grown in and around their airports. That's why they need to fly near an airport somewhere.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep, and of course the FAA protects that activity by saying all public airports shall allow this.
And you can't change it.
We cannot.
Okay.
Yep. So a lot of people have asked that. And by the way, people have said they don't mind the occasional plane. They really don't mind the occasional plane who's flying in, flying out. It's usually the training activity. When a plane's here for 5, 6, 7 passes, and he leaves, and there's another one here. But that's what was bothering most people. But we cannot prohibit that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that's a done deal. It's going to happen.
It is. Yep.
Okay. Have you talked to them and said, hey, can you do less of it? Or are you even able to do something like that? Even suggest to them, say, hey, could you cut back on these things?
We are. In fact, that's something that the FAA does allow us to do, to adopt, for lack of a better word, fly-friendly procedures. If you want to fly into Cottonwood and you'd like to be as noise sensitive as possible, would you please do these things? Now, by the way, all those things are nixed by safety. If you need to fly there for safety reasons, you do what you need to do for safety. But if safely possible, can you please do these things? So we went over to Prescott, met with the 4 largest flight schools over there, and we said, guys, here's the issue. And they came up with a lot of neat ideas, by the way. If I have time, I'll go through several of them. But one of the ideas was, could we come up with, for lack of a better word, a gentleman's agreement of when you'll fly, can you condense your hours? And they said, you know what, in order to be as friendly as possible, we'd be willing to do that.
Oh, okay.
In fact, one of the ideas we came up with, and I say we, actually it was mostly the flight schools, they said, what if we said they would voluntarily limit their touch and go activity to Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, business hours. And they said they'd be willing to do something like that. The Airport Commission talked about it at length. And ultimately, the Airport Commission actually decided not to go with that because they were concerned that actually what it's going to do is compress the activity, and we may actually get more complaints during that Monday through Friday 8 to 5, as opposed to it being spread out throughout the whole week. So ultimately, the Airport Commission didn't recommend that agreement, but it was definitely worth the discussion.
Okay, we're going to take a break, okay? Cottonwood Management Analyst Morgan Scott in studio today. The website is cottonwoodaz.gov. You can find the draft plan there, or the plan in general, at the website. Stick around, Countywide, back in just a couple minutes.
Start your journey toward better health with Ageless Touches Massage Therapy. Licensed massage therapist Richard Stevens uses the latest and best equipment to relieve scar tissue, electronic smog, and tinnitus. Ageless Touches does everything they can to work your issues down to the bone. Improve your path to better health with Ageless Touches Massage.
Award-winning Soundbites Grill is an entertainment restaurant located in Uptown Sedona at the Hyatt Pinion Point Resort. Open for lunch and dinner, featuring fresh fish, all-natural hand-cut beef, even a full vegan menu. Family-friendly, open 11:30 to 9, late dining on Friday and Saturday. Soundbites Grill has some of the best views of the Sedona Red Rocks. Offers world-class entertainment, food, fun, and music.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking about airport noise in Cottonwood with management analyst Morgan Scott. CottonwoodAZ.gov is where you can find the draft plan of the airport noise plan to reduce it.
Yep.
I don't even know what to call it. What do I call it? Airport noise draft plan?
I'm calling it the action plan.
The action plan for airport noise? Okay.
And the only reason we don't call it the noise abatement plan or noise mitigation plan is from an FAA point of view. Those actually mean very specific things, that these are not abatement or mitigation. This is just action items we can take to minimize noise as much as possible.
The FAA is really the top umbrella on this, aren't they? You guys are underneath there, and you just have to go with what the FAA wants and what their rules and regulations are, and you're confined to those restraints, aren't you?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And for two reasons we're confined to their restraints. First is they paid for the majority of the airport. Since 1968, 90% of all capital funds have been FAA dollars, not local dollars, not only about 5% have been local dollars. So as part of them giving those grants, they'll say things like, you will allow training activity, you will allow things like that. So that's the first reason. The second reason is federal law actually prohibits any local government from regulating the air. Anything in the air is federal jurisdiction. So the city actually cannot limit, say, noise activity like we can limit noise activity from motorcycles or cars. A lot of people say, why don't we just establish an ordinance? Federal law prohibits us from doing that.
Does the FAA pay Cottonwood to manage the airport and keep track of the airport, or they've just given us grant money to work on the airport?
They only give us grant money for capital projects.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the airport is fairly self-sustaining as far as paying for itself, its own operations. It can't pay for itself as far as growth of capital projects. So that's where the FAA comes in.
Why don't we just buy it and we can do whatever we want to it?
So interesting enough, the city owns it.
Oh, then there we go. But still.
Because we receive grant money, their grant money says you will do X, Y, and Z.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's why.
All right.
Yep.
Where do we go next?
So what have we already done, and then what can we do moving forward?
Yes. What's next then? Yeah.
So things we've already done is we have published a map in accordance with state law. Arizona state law requires all public airports to publish what's called an airport vicinity map and record that with the county recorder's office. And it basically is a big square that says, hey, if you live in this area, you can expect to reasonably be impacted by aircraft noise. That was published by Cottonwood in 2006. So if you buy property in Cottonwood, you pull a title report, that document will show up saying, hey, if you're in this area, you can reasonably expect to be impacted by aircraft noise. So that occurred back in 2006. A few other things we've done is all development or all development near the airport since 2017 has given us a navigation easement. Now, a lot of people say, what's an navigation easement?
I'm saying that right now in my head.
It's a term I was not aware of. In fact, I wanted to call it an aviation easement, but the FAA actually has a very specific terminology that they provide the template for it.
Okay.
And what it does is it restricts things like height. It also, it's an easement over your property, just like a power line easement or a water easement.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, but basically, when you buy a property, this document shows up, says, by the way, aircraft will be flying over your home. You can't build a
4-story mansion.
Exactly.
Okay.
You can't build tall trees above this height and those kind of things.
Gotcha.
So it's an additional document in addition to that airport vicinity map.
And anybody that built out there or bought out there, they get this information, right? It's got to be in with the paperwork.
Since 2006. That's
Since 2006, okay.
Yep.
Were there many houses out there before 2006? I want to say the Black Hills area and all that kind of really developed quickly. It went up really fast, but it's hard for me to remember.
Yeah, Black Hills.
Because the college has been out there forever.
Yep.
There was the airport. I know there's been a few other things out there, but I'm trying to remember when the Black Hills really took off because it just really boomed out there.
It did, especially the Crossroads area. That boomed after 2006.
Okay.
But most of the houses near Black Hills were prior to that.
Okay.
Cottonwood Ranch was late 90s. Verde Village Unit 8, of course, most of that was developed prior to 2006. Yep.
But we all knew there was an airport there before we bought and built. At least I would hope we did. Okay, so some of it's got to fall back on the folks too, though. I mean, we did know that there was an airport there. I mean, you and I were talking before the show. I've seen it in Sedona numerous times over the years where people complain about airport noise and that the airport's up on top of a mesa. And there's not much you can do about it. There's houses all the way around it. You hear about it in Prescott all the time. Flagstaff has got that coming in now too, where they're getting more complaints because they've got additional commercial flights going in and out of there. So it's just a thing that if you live near an airport, you're going to hear airport noise. So what are some of the other? I'm getting off track. Sorry about that.
No, it's actually a great point. If you don't mind, I'll go with it.
Okay, sure.
And there's a great case study in Denver, Colorado, where the citizens came up and they complained and they put together a task force and they moved the airport, literally hundreds of millions of dollars, to rebuild a new airport outside of town, far away from everyone else.
Oh.
Now what happened? Now you have water, sewer, electric power out there. Now the land all around that airport has developed, and they're complaining about where the new airport is. And that all happened within a 20-year period.
It's that whole build a road and they'll drive on it, right? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And that's unfortunately what happens is you put an airport out somewhere, but as part of that you extend utilities, and now all that land around it becomes developable. And that's the story of airports across the country.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. All right. So what are some of the other things that people can do to lessen the airport noise out there?
So one thing that Cottonwood's already done is we have what's called a calm wind runway.
Okay.
And what that means is if it's safe, we ask pilots, if safely possible, can you please take off to the north versus the south? And the reason is the nearest resident to the north is 6,600 feet from the end of the runway. To the south, it's 1,400 feet.
Okay.
So can you please take off to the north if safely possible? There's a few days a month where, depending on wind, weather, temperature, aircraft, everything else, they may need to take off to the south. Every once in a while we get concerns of, hey, they're taking off to the south today. Well, ultimately it's at that pilot's discretion. If he feels it's safe, or then he needs to take off to the south.
If I'm a new pilot and I'm a little worried about it, I would probably want to, what's the benefit of taking off south?
It all depends on wind, on temperature. There's some aircraft who are more sensitive than others. For example, a tail dragger, he's much more sensitive to the wind than, say, a traditional trike aircraft.
Okay.
So it depends on wind, and you're right, the experience of the pilot. A 20-year
But
pilot.
it's a plane, safety first. You can't hit anything with a plane.
Yes.
So safety first always comes. Okay.
Yep. So that's why we always preface why all of these are, if safely possible.
If safely possible. All right.
Yeah, please do this.
Okay. What else we got?
So we have documented all concerns that we've received since March 2018. In fact, you might have seen that map where we basically just started randomly placing dots on a map of, okay, where are the impacted areas? Who's being impacted? And is there anything we can do? If we have time on this show, we'll talk about a few other things we considered doing. And that map was really helpful as far as, can we adjust the pattern slightly? So that's one thing we started doing in March of 2018.
Okay, we got to the end of the break, unfortunately. Cottonwood Management Analyst Morgan Scott in studio today. This plan is on their website, cottonwoodaz.gov. This is countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Breakthrough Medicine's Dr. Shada Sina offers comprehensive hormone testing and customized hormone therapy with a focus on lifestyle medicine, weight loss, allergy drops, brain and digestive health, seasonal detox, and nutrition. Dr. Sina is a referral physician for Suzanne Summers, specializing in bioidentical hormones for men and women. Breakthrough Medicine is located in Cottonwood's Hot Yoga Plaza. Call for a 15-minute complimentary new patient consultation, 928-649-0269, or visit online at breakthrough-medicine.com.
Northern Arizona Mortgage Corporation is your local choice for personalized home loans, and they've been doing it since 1986. They help home buyers obtain FHA, VA, USDA guaranteed rural housing, and conventional loans. From start to finish, they offer a safe in-person application process with licensed loan originators. Contact Shelley White Collier at northernArizonaMortgage.com or call 634-4251. Visit their office, located at 707 East Mingus, Suite 601, Cottonwood.
Paul Stanley here with Stanley Steel Structures. We offer shade structures that provide style, value, and performance. Our Equinox louvered roof opens and closes to give you the ultimate patio experience. We also offer Alumawood shade covers that looks like wood but lasts like steel and never needs painting or maintenance. Visit us at StanleySteelStructures.com. Contact us today and be covered tomorrow. Stanley Steel Structures. Let us add some space to your place.
Did you know parking over tall, dry grass can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Just a couple minutes left of the program. We're going to bang out the rest of this plan. So let's turn it over to Morgan and just have you kind of finish up what it is that the plan has in store for the area.
Sure. So what are we doing moving forward as far as this noise action plan? The first is, and we mentioned this before the show, that we have a new FBO. Now, an FBO is a fixed base operator. It's someone who actually provides employees who are there on the field. Paul, I'm not sure if you've ever been to the airport, but a couple of years ago it was a ghost town. There was nobody out there. Now there's actually an employee there 7 days a week, and he can help us with assisting and carrying out this plan. So that's going to be a huge help. One of the things that the pilots came up with, and I really appreciate them thinking outside the box, is we can request no midfield takeoffs. There's several aircraft, in fact a lot based at this field, that don't need the whole runway to take off. So most of them, they'll go middle of the runway and they'll take off from there. Well, we can ask them, please go to the end of the runway. Well, that puts them an additional 2,000 feet further from the homes. The homes are already about 6,600 feet. If we can add an additional 2,000 feet, now by the time they get there, they're maybe 100 feet higher over the home. So the pilot said, you know what, that's a reasonable thing to do. Okay. A minor inconvenience, and I appreciate the pilots coming up with that one. If you haven't heard, we're doing a master plan process for the airport. This is where we really need input from the community moving forward. What do we want from the airport over the next 10, 20 years? That's going to be starting this fall. We'll do about 5 public meetings, which we'll be inviting people. As part of that process, we'd like to explore what's called the displaced threshold. Now, what a displaced threshold is it adds 1,000 feet extra pavement for someone to take off on. So that we just talked about getting an additional 2,000 feet from the homes. This will be another 1,000 feet from the end of the homes. So we're going to explore that. There's a lot of details that go into that, but we're going to explore that opportunity. Okay. So those are a couple things we're looking into. We have installed new signage on the field to remind pilots of the calm wind runway, because every once in a while you do have pilots who either don't know or take off to the south on a calm day. So those have been installed. We'd like to meet with the Planning and Zoning Department on an annual basis to make sure we're all familiar and aware of what is compatible use in and around the airport. I think what happens is the airport was a sleepy little airport for years. So when someone came in with the subdivision, everyone said, no problem. Well, then the airport grows and everyone remembers, okay, that may have not been a good compatible use near the airport. So we'll hold annual meetings with the Planning and Zoning Department, reminding them and reminding us of what is a compatible use and how do we work with these different developments. Okay. We got like 30 seconds left, maybe a minute left. I got one question for you. Yep. Can Cottonwood Airport grow and get bigger? Can commercial flights be brought in? That sort of thing. So it's very unlikely we'll have commercial flights. And a lot of people say, why not? Well, even Prescott has struggled to support commercial flights, and it's a population much greater than Cottonwood. So, but can the Cottonwood Airport grow? I think from an economic generation point of view, absolutely. So that doesn't necessarily mean more flights or more training flights. It might mean, from a land use perspective, we have a lot of land in and around the airport that could be brought in for a business that wants to be next to an airport. Say a manufacturing business that wants to fly out its equipment or product. So yes, I think the airport can grow from an economic point of view. The airport's not going to grow much as far as commercial flights. So
all right, Morgan.
Sorry, Paul, you're not going to fly out of Cottonwood.
We're out of time. CottonwoodAZ.gov. You can take a look at the plan right there. Again, public meetings are coming up shortly, so we'll talk about those in the news as well. Thank you, Morgan Scott, very much for coming in. That is today's Countywide. As always, thanks for watching, listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.